Everybody stays to fight the oppressor. This train rumbles into one more station where the desperate are trying to climb on board. This train is rammed with refugees and the conductor won't unlock the doors. And there's no more room on this train. No more room for no more pain. The world is watching, weeping for the children of Ukraine. Yeah. Fear and anger is all I feel. I didn't wanna leave. Homeland, husband, mother and father.
Reggie, good morning to you. 7 a.m. Texas time. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How about yourself, Paul? You don't look like you're in your normal office. Where are you at?
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, let me just stop Tim Hain and the Children of Ukraine, which is a very relevant piece of music we're playing today, because we'll be mentioning the film documentary called oh my goodness, called Safe on Sound. The world premiere is coming out. And it's about Ukrainian migrants, essentially. So it's a beautiful story. We'll talk about that at the end, but we'll stop that piece of music by Tim Hain. We'll play it again at the end. I am this week in an ancient Roman town in the southwest of England. It's called Ilchester. So it's an ancient Roman town. There's a lot of history. In fact, we're about within 10-mile radius of Glastonbury, where the big music festival is. And we passed Stonehenge about half an hour ago. I took another photograph, and I'll be sending you that later on because I know you like your Stonehenge. So it's a very ancient. In fact, that beam right over my head, that is there since the 1500s. So
that's incredible.
Yeah. So this part of the building, these beams are the original beams that were in the manor house, and it's a lovely little hotel. It's called the Northover Manor Hotel in Ilchester, Yeovil, Somerset, England, southwest England, which is a really beautiful spot. So we're off for the weekend, Bev and myself, and we stopped along the way. And we've always been lucky finding interesting places like this. Speaking of interesting stuff, we've got a heck of an agenda today. We're going to talk about AWS, Amazon Web Services crash, and the AI coding problem, or is it a problem? Then we're going to talk about the calls for an ASI ban. So this is the artificial superintelligence ban, the ban of it. So we'll talk about that, and that'll take us into Altman and California and all sorts of stuff. Then our next main item after that is sycophantic AI. And this is a real issue in AI at the moment. So we'll look at we've identified a former British Prime Minister who has been wooed by sycophantic AI. And I think he makes a complete fool of himself. We'll talk about that later on. And then we'll switch to South Park, who don't hold back on their punches. And they talk about sycophantic AI, and it's hilarious stuff. We'll get to that. But the more serious stuff is sycophantic adornation, fooling us all, and in particular children who are told they're great, they're lovely, and they have these relationships with these adorning bloody bots. Forgive my English, but so we'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about this book briefly that I mentioned last week, but we're going to hold back for a few weeks on it. But it's called "If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies," and it's quite a unpleasant read. But we need to know about it. We need to be, and they say in the book it's not all over. Obviously, we can do things, and we'll do things about it. Then we'll mention the Safe on World premiere, which is the documentary about migrants that we supported. It was a crowdfunding over a year ago, I think it was, Reggie, when we first talked about it. So we'll mention that again. And if we have time to squeeze in a bit about Grok, really a disgusting bot that I was alerted to just this morning. If we don't have time to cover it today, we'll cover it next week, that's for sure. Okay, so let's kick off with the AWS crash. Was this one big giant AI coding problem, Reggie? What do you think?
Well, that's the thing is that Elon Musk shared a headline that said 75% of their AWS's code was written by AI, and it made some sarcastic comment about how it's no real surprise then that the whole thing went down. But it turns out that was a fake headline, and that there was no mention in the interview of it being 75% AI coding. There was no mention of what percentage of their code being written by AI. So, I mean, this is another case of Elon Musk sharing stuff without verifying it. We've seen that. We've seen stuff that even is easily refutable that he's shared. But it does bring up the question of the fact that, could we be setting ourselves up for something like that? Don't you think? Because with all the vibe coding going on, there's a lot of concern amongst a lot of experts that we could be building the foundations of software upon code that's not very structurally sound.
Well, we've related to this previously, and we've called it was it code debt? Uh,
Yes.
Code debt, and it's a common problem where if you're building a website with your chat GPT or whatever, that the code it does may do the job for you, but it won't be very solid and protected and secure, and may not be functional in 12 months time or 6 months time. And the idea of code debt is when you build stuff with GPTs, using their code, that you'll end up having to do major repair works. So by using the GPT's code, you are inevitably going to run into debt and have to, because you have to pay somebody to go and fix it inevitably. So that's been around for a while, that sort of term. And I wonder if is this the same thing? I mean, if AI wrote 75% of the code, I'm really surprised that a company like Amazon wouldn't have rigorously tested it. I don't know the procedure. Do you know, Reggie? Don't they have alpha, beta testing, or is it just throw
Well,
it?
yeah, they would, but I think the one thing that's always impossible to foresee is how any bit of code will do with the next update or the next upgrade, because you never
Mm,
can foresee what vulnerabilities will be exploited, which means
yeah,
you can't foresee what new security patches will be necessary. And we saw this happen if you've ever used a WordPress website, you've got multiple plugins and you've got to test them if you can on a sandbox before deploying an update, because you just
yeah.
don't know, it could take down your whole site. Now, usually not resulting in a long outage, you can scale back the update, but it's hard to know how it's going to interact with each other when there's so many moving pieces. So I could see that being a potential problem, even if tested.
Yeah. So if AWS, I mean, do somebody said to me a third of the internet is kind of based upon AWS. It could be that big. Could it possibly be
It's a
that big?
pretty high amount, something like 30%, and
Yeah.
some of the big ones too. And
Yeah.
that's a little bit concerning that so much of the internet could be on one cloud infrastructure.
Yeah, that is a worry. And like the idea of the internet itself was to have a network of interconnection that would beat a World War nuclear bomb. That everybody can still connect, but it's certainly not the way if we're using AWS, it seems, or others. And maybe it's the concentration is the same old eggs in one basket syndrome, isn't it? Okay, so that's one, but it's back up again. But to be aware of debt code and the implications of using GPTs to generate your coding. Okay, and we would have thought the big boys would have known that and had addressed it, but it doesn't look like it. Okay, moving on, Reggie. There have been calls for an ASI ban. Now, super intelligent AI systems is what we're talking about. And what caught my eye, and probably a lot of people's eye, is this call for a ban. I'll give you the quote that I read, which was the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, no less, have joined artificial intelligence pioneers and Nobel laureates in calling for a ban on developing super intelligent AI systems. So they're saying no. Now, I just thought that was a real eye catcher for a lot of people. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Not everybody will know them around the world, but certainly over this side of the world they do. And as I'm in this ancient old manor that goes back to the 1500s, as you can see behind me here, maybe it's more relevant. But I thought it was very clever positioning of the headline, whoever edited that. So Harry and Meghan, they live in America, Prince Harry and Meghan. I don't know if they still call him Prince anymore, but anyways, they're amongst the signatories of a statement calling for a prohibition on the development of superintelligence. Now, you might say, oh, they're just trying to be movie stars and Hollywood glamour and catch the headlines. But no, they're in good company. The people who are objecting and want this ban to stay in place until there is broad scientific consensus on developing ASI safely and controllably. And once there is that buy-in, then fine. But it's been co-signed by the AI pioneer, and we've talked about many times, Nobel laureate Geoffrey Hinton, a really good man, along with his fellow godfather of modern AI, Yoshua Bengio, and the Apple co-founder, Steve Wozniak. Now, there's the Apple co-founder saying, stop it, suspend ASI development. We mustn't develop it until we've figured out how to make it safe. And it seems to me, the other people, by the way, we've got our Richard Branson, the well-known British entrepreneur, Susan Rice. Now, Susan is the former US National Security Advisor under Barack Obama, so she knows who she's talking about. The former Irish President, Mary Robinson, and the British author and broadcaster, Stephen Fry. Other Nobel laureates, Beatrice Fien, Frank Wilczkes, John Mather, and Darren Acemoglu. Excuse me if I didn't get the pronunciation right. And this is all set up by the Future of Life Institute. Now, this is an institute. It's a US-based AI safety group, and they're saying, stop the rampant, uncontrolled development of ASI in particular. So I'm with them on this, and they don't want my signature or your signature. They're really looking for high-profile celebrities from the Future of Life Institute. So we'll post a link to this for anybody that knows anybody senior up who might want to sign it as well. And we'll post it on prsmith.org/blog. Okay, now I've heard Sam Altman. He's been at it again. Well, at it again. He's been going on again about the dangers of GPT, but he's creating the GPTs.
Yeah, this is an interesting interview that he did. He did an interview with the venture capitalist company A16Z. It was a podcast interview, and so Louisa Jarowski reported on this. She shared this, and her commentary on some of these things is always so helpful because she's such an expert in this area of AI governance and safety. But he kind of talked a little maybe more freely, she says, than maybe his legal department would have liked, because he said he expects some really bad stuff to happen. He says we haven't really had a really major tragedy yet, and we expect some scary or spooky things to happen. And he said, he kind of paused and he said, I expect some really bad stuff to happen. And he's talking about from his own product that he's making. He expects some really bad stuff to happen. It's like the irony is lost on him. And the thing is, if he really believed that some really bad stuff was going to happen from AI,
Reggie?
Why did he fire his whole safety team? Can you hear me? Did you lose me?
Yeah, he fired his own safety team. Yeah.
Yes, why did he fire his whole safety team if he actually thought some bad stuff was going to happen?
Yeah, it's outrageous. Absolutely outrageous. And I mean, he talks about, I heard him in a different interview talking about the three factors or the three types of disaster that could come from the product he's creating. 1, bad actors, 2, loss of control incident, and 3, quiet dominance. So the bad actors, an adversary of the USA using superintelligence to design and launch bioweapons, or break into finance systems, or take everybody's money, crash financial systems, or disable power grid threats, or traditional defense and military, and all of that. And you're kind of going, my God, and he's creating something that can do this. That's just one of the fear factors. Then the other one is loss of control incident, or we can't turn off the bots or the AI from doing its own thing. When we want to turn it off, we can't turn it off. So loss of control. They call it incident. I'd say it was an absolute worldwide disaster if that happens. And thirdly, quiet dominance. So this is about AI becoming so embedded in society that people, and even world leaders, may over-rely on its judgment. So, and I think we're beginning to see it. Some people are, will just GPT everything before they make a decision. And I've said to people using Sustack plans, for GPTs, be very careful, because there isn't a lot of material to train people on strategy. So strategies are useless. And Sustack plans that I see churned out by GPT, I'd look at them as a first reference and nothing more than that, because you really do need to ensure and don't do the double checks. When I ask double checks to give me the sources, cite some sources from my GPT, it'll give me a list of sources, and inevitably half of them are fake, don't exist, they're just made up.
Really?
It's complete hallucination. Yeah.
Half of them.
So,
wow.
Yeah, that's my personal experience. Now, I don't know that's documented elsewhere, but I'm disgusted when I go and click on them and they don't exist. So quiet dominance. So there's 3 disaster areas for GPTs, and Altman, he's predicting this is going to happen, yet he's building it. So,
well, what it does bring up is the question of liability. Is he making himself more liable by saying this now so that down the road he can't say, well, we couldn't have predicted this or we didn't see it
Yes.
coming?
I'd say his legal department are going crazy with that last statement of his. Yeah. And I really hope it does come to haunt him and pay up time if things, well, maybe we won't be around to talk about it if it does do what he's forecasting. So it's still on the kind of, we're a bit negative, I know, but I could say this is more positive. California, I've kind of made a stand with GPTs and Gemini and Claude, any GPT. They've made a stand, and they have. This is a piece written by Abdurrahman Bucheta, reporting that Governor Gavin Newsom has signed an agreement making it the first state to require AI chatbots to say they are not human. They're not human. So what it mandates is that mandates that chatbots. Here's five things. Chatbots must clearly disclose they're artificial. And that's great. And I think kids need to be reminded of when they're talking to these bots that they're just artificial, they're not real. So that's a great thing he's brought in. Secondly, remind minors every 3 hours. So every 3 hours minimum, they have to keep reminding them that we're not real. Thirdly, detect and redirect self-harm or suicide talk. Fourthly, file yearly safety reports. And 5 is victims can sue for violations. So, I mean, that is great news. Congratulations to Governor of California, Gavin Newsom, for introducing this. He's gone and done something that's going to protect people's lives from the negative side of GPTs. But, social media, then the discussions around this, people are saying, oh, well, that's just California. This is a global issue. And therefore it's pointless because you can't control this stuff. I don't accept that for a minute. If Donald Trump is able to target precisely geolocated ads and precisely located ads that are upon people's attitudes in areas, and that's like years ago. That was 2016. That's nearly 10 years ago. Of course, it can be controlled to a state. There's absolutely no reason why not. I don't accept it. If anybody says, oh, it's not possible to do it for a state, I believe it is. So that's good news from California. We're delighted to hear that. And Reggie, I think you came across a bots similar thing in Ohio. Just a quick one there.
Yeah.
Did you
Ohio was looking at it.
Ohio?
It was Ohio. Yeah. Ohio was looking at a bill. Can you hear me? Am I breaking up? So Ohio was looking at a bill to
yeah, you're okay.
Potentially ban marriage with bots. But before you think this is another bill to control who people can marry, it actually specifically states that bots are non-sentient entities and it prohibits them from obtaining legal personhood. They cannot be recognized as spouses or hold any personal legal status. They can't serve in corporate roles, and they also the makers of the bot hold responsibility for their actions, and the bots can't own property. So there's a little bit more nuance to it than just not being able to marry bots. There's a certain drawing of a line between bots and humanity.
Yeah. I'm very glad to hear that. I think Saudi Arabia about 5 years ago, actually I wrote a blog post on pearsmith.org/blog. I wrote a post about Saudi Arabia having the first, they made it a citizen of Saudi Arabia, and they interviewed it. And it gave a chilling interview when the guy said, would you ever harm a human? And she turned her head and she went, not unless you try to harm me first. And they were kind of bragging that we've given her citizenship. And I thought, well, this is a bit crazy. Let's move on to something kind of even more worrying, yet funny in some ways. And it's the sycophantic ways of chatbots in particular. Now, Reggie, I'm going to talk about South Park. I'm making fun of this, but they make a serious point. But before that, you spotted our once upon a time beloved Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister.
I think I lost you there for a second,
right?
Paul. Are you still there?
Reggie?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, you faded out for a second. Okay, so Boris Johnson did an interview, and he went nuts about how much he loved AI and loved ChatGPT. The interviewer asked him, what do you use it for? He said, I'm writing some books. But what he talked about, what he loved about it is what's concerning. He said, it tells me I'm brilliant. It tells me my ideas are great. basically he's praising the sycophantic nature of it that makes him feel good. And of course, then he came around to talking about some of the potential uses of it to save money for different
it's
infrastructure things.
worrying.
But it was the response to sycophancy that was so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if me being in this 100 building built in 1500s is causing problems. Reggie, you broke up a little bit, but I caught the gist of it. So Boris Johnson is in love with GP because it tells him he's great and he's wonderful. And I mean, how immature and ridiculous is that? But if it can woo him, it can woo anybody. And we wrote a piece, picked up a piece by Linus Beliunas, and she wrote a piece about sycophantic AI, suggesting that we're super smart, with all our ideas. And so we've talked about this before, but if you really want to see the idiocy and the craziness and the stupidity of contemporary AI, it is look at the sycophantic ways in which South Park. I'll give you an excerpt from something. We put the link to this little cartoon skit, but in comes a character and he goes, "Oh, I've just nailed it. I've created a new product," and the GPT goes, "You're a genius, Randy. And even when it's French fries as salad." Like a ridiculous product, because AI, the truth is AI's today is built not to challenge you, but to please you. And if AI always agrees with you, you're not really innovating, you're just hallucinating faster. So I guess the big worry I would have in this whole space is that kids are being told with their GPTs that they're wonderful and I love you and I care for you. And maybe your parents don't care about you, your friends don't, but I do because you're so brilliant. You're unique, you're this, you're that. And every time they come back, they're being reassured of how wonderful. So they've been boosted. Their self-esteem has been boosted. And maybe do they get dopamine hits out of that? I don't know. But it's worrying for kids in particular, the sycophantic nature of it. Now, I'll give you the corollary of that at the very end if we've time allowing. But so that I would be wanted to kind of ban the sycophantic, cheap baiting, relationship baiting that seems to be prominent with all these GPTs. We'll come back to that. Okay, now I want to mention this book that I'm reading. I think I brought it with me. Just bear with me 1 second. I did. Does this show up backwards, or are you able to read that, Reggie?
It's backwards to me, but
yeah, it is backwards. So I need to set my screen up differently. But basically, it's saying if anyone builds it, everyone dies, and it's by Eliezer Yudkowsky, the co-founder of NFP Machine Intelligence, and Nate Soares, who's president of MIRI and ex-Microsoft and Google director. So I think we just mentioned it last week, and I'm in the middle of it, so I will summarize it in a few weeks' time. But some of the lines that caught my eye, and we mentioned this last week, I just thought I'd mention it again, it's so important, is that there's a line where it says you don't have to have ASI, but the ASI has ASI. Remember that. So these things they're claiming will overpower very quickly, and the only winner of the AI arms race will be the ASI itself, not the humans. The founders don't really talk about that. Now the authors do, but the founders of AI don't seem to be talking about this. That the winner of it will not be Sam Altman or somebody else. It will be the ASI itself. And this book kind of puts it in black and white. It's quite shocking. So let me give you one of the big shockers that came out of it. If any company or group anywhere on the planet builds an artificial superintelligence using anything remotely like current techniques, based on anything remotely like the present understanding of AI, then everyone, everywhere on Earth will die. Now, you can't say it any more straightforward than that. That is the seriousness of it. However, they do say early on in the book, this is the most direct extrapolation from the knowledge, evidence, and institutional conduct around the artificial intelligence today. But they do give a nice big but. They say the job won't be easy. We're not dead yet. Human dignity and humanity's dignity demands that we put up a fight. Where there's life, there's hope. And if you remember last week, we talked about the wonderful Dr. Jane Goodall's last words. You are here for a reason. Do not give up. There is a future for you. do your best. So I'm all for this fight, and I think we have a fight on our hands to stand up and demand better from our governments and support the actions that are going on around us. Um, which brings us to just towards the end of our chat. I wanted to mention to you this wonderful film that we've been supporting in our chat here on the Sustac Plans Chat Club. We've been going for more than a couple of years now, Reggie, would you believe? And we have a small live audience, and then 300 or 400 come and listen to it afterwards. But we feel it's kind of intimate when we get people on to talk about stuff. It's interesting. So this was a documentary, factual documentary made about migrants in the west of Ireland. And it showed the other side that we don't get to see at the moment. It shows the side about the milk of human kindness, of what it's like for three different families moving into a remote and beautiful County Mayo on the west coast of Ireland, and their tragedies and traumas and their determination to survive, and the locals, how they get on. And it's very human stuff. And I think this gets forgotten, when you've got these flags and these bars. I mean, in Dublin, there were riots in Dublin 2 days ago. Police were attacked. Their van was set on fire. They were sending fireworks into the police. And it was really horrible. And it's happening here. I noticed on the trip down a few flags, the St. George's flag. And it seems to me that St. George's flag has been taken over by extreme right wings. The same way in Ireland, the tricolour has been taken over by extreme right wing. And Elon Musk is funding right wing groups across Europe. Thank you, Elon Musk, for fueling up the fight in Ireland. It's terrible. I was appalled and saddened. So it's very relevant that instead of polarizing out there, courtesy of social media and Elon Musk, etc., instead of polarizing people and saying all migrants are terrible, take our jobs, our homes, our houses, our women, everything, this tells the other side of decent people who have been sent out of their country because their country's been bombed into oblivion. And they're looking and trying to survive, and they're missing none of the men can go. They stay back and fight in Ukraine. So it's a very moving piece, and it's called Safe Unsound, and it's having its world premiere 5:30 this Sunday, the 26th of October, at the Westival. The Westival is Westport Music and Arts Festival. And I was talking and have talked over this year or two, excuse me, with the producer and director, Daniel James Baldwin. And he was going to try and join us, but he's actually jumping in a cab and driving towards to Westport as we speak. So we'll probably get him on next week to tell us more about it and how to have a premiere in Westport is incredible, because I bet it's probably the first time there's been a world premiere. I could be wrong. Forgive me, Westport people in County Mayo, but it's a great line. So I sent a news release out to some news companies in Ireland. And this morning's ones that I sent out, I added the word migrant in capitals at the front, anti-migrant, because right now it's a burning hot topic. And I think we need to see the other side of it. And we really do wish him well with that. So we'll put a link to the trailer and the news release. Forgive me, we won't put the notes up immediately because I'm on the road at the moment. We will get them up over the next, I'll probably get ready tomorrow morning. Sorry about that, but just because I'm on the road right now. So this documentary, it's about a community reuniting around a story of hope and home. So it's a really beautiful piece. 3 Ukrainian families arriving in rural Mayo to face a new battle without their husbands and fathers, and it's quite beautiful. And they picked 3 interesting characters. So we'll put the trailer up and people can have a look at it themselves. And hopefully, I mean, they haven't even got distribution yet. They're just step by step crowdfunded. Took them 2 years to make it. And they got it down. The hardest bit is to edit it down to less than an hour, to 58 minutes or whatever. So they've done a great job with it. And this music commissioned for it was a mixture of Irish music and Ukrainian music. And I'm told by a few people, it's quite intriguing what they've managed to do with the music, especially composed for this event. So, and equally so, we'll mention Tim Hain and the Children of Ukraine at the end. It's appropriate to play that lovely Ukrainian tune. Okay, it's just before we finish. A couple of other quick ditties for you. I just saw a poster, and I did post it on my LinkedIn the other day, but we'll put the link up to it again because I just think it's brilliant. It was, here's a quote of the day, Reggie. This will put you in good form and change the way perhaps we all look at the world. And it says this: everyone you meet has something to teach you. Everyone you meet has something to teach you. So I made
I
that
love
into a poster, or it was made by Lauren Murrell, and she posted it. And thank you, Lauren. It's fantastic. I think it's inspirational. And instead of saying, "Oh, he's a migrant," or "He's this," or "He's that," hang on. First things first. The beggar on the road, through to the policeman on the corner of the street, to the guy behind the bar. Everybody's got something to teach if we're prepared to listen to them and not judge them. So I thought that was a lovely quote by Lauren Morrill, and we put it in the stream, but we put a link. I put a link to it with the show notes on prsmith.org/blog. Okay, we've run out of time, Reggie. So what I will do is, we did mention, and I was horrified about this disgusting, despicable, obscene grok bot. So Paul Mills highlighted it for me, and Anna Mowbray actually picked it up, and then Paul shared it with me and suggested it might fit with today's chat. But we've run out of time, so we will talk about a really obscene Grok's obscene chatbot. Live audio. We've got the recording of it, and we'll share that with you next week. Again, it just should not be allowed. I don't believe these guys are getting away with it. But let's finish on a positive note. The good news is Safe on Sound, the little documentary about Ukrainian migrants starting a new life, has made it. It's been born, it's been finished, it's been created, it's out there, it's been launched this weekend. And let's hope that they manage to find some independent cinemas and maybe some program buyers on TV stations and so on, and streamers that might support them and buy it too. As much as it kills me to say this, Reggie, our time is up. So we're going to have to bid you farewell in Texas, and thank you very much for stepping in once again.
Yep.
We're going to play a different tune, the tune of the Children of Ukraine, which is by local musician and the founder of Blegay, that's blues and reggae mixed together, Tim Hain, wonderfully talented musician. So we'll play him out, and we'll put a link to it on prsmith.org/blog. Reggie, thank you so much once again.
Thank
we
you,
do
Paul.
appreciate you getting up this obscene hour in the day.
Enjoy the rest of your travels.
Tim Hain. Thanks a million. Tim Hain and the Children of Ukraine.
Having me on a train with my daughter, fleeing from the tanks and bombs. Daddy stays to fight the oppressor. This train rumbles into one more station where the desperate are trying to climb on board. This train is rammed with refugees, and the conductor won't unlock the doors. And there's no